That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Apprentice, the fourth film directed by Ali Abbasi, which premiered in competition at the 2024 Cannes Film Festival. It is being released courtesy of Briarcliff Entertainment on October 11th, 2024.
Are you familiar with this director's other films?
Yes, all which I've liked to varying degrees, but Shelley, I remember seeing in Berlin, which is kind of a pregnancy horror film. His most celebrated is his 2018 film Border, which I know you have read about, and I believe you would like. It's strange and interesting and all kinds of stuff going on. And then Holy Spider, which also premiered in competition at Cannes and won Zahar Amir Ebrahimi Best Actress Prize.
What is The Apprentice about? The story of how a young Donald Trump started his real estate business in 1970s and 80s New York with the helping hand of infamous lawyer Roy Cohn. What is your pull quote?
While it aims to feel like Pygmalion or Faust, as written by Machiavelli, The Apprentice is surprisingly reticent in its courteous approach to the molding of America's most infamous oligarch, who is portrayed with eerie finesse by Sebastian Stan.
Mine. Sebastian Stan gives a spectacular performance in a film that, to quote its own script, finds it hard to settle on a grand narrative.
Yeah, although Trump's camp would have you think that this is extremely controversial, but I don't think it feels that way.
No, and really, I mean, the premise I read is accurate, but I feel like a lot of details aren't there to such a degree that I don't know, if it weren't for the strength of Sebastian Stan's performance, I think I would have been somewhat disappointed overall. Because I'm not quite sure the story we're trying to tell. It's pretty simple. We meet Donald Trump and in like the late 70s, and he's saying he's a VP for his father's business.
Who's played by Martin Donovan, Fred Trump.
And Donald Trump wants to buy an old hotel called the Commodore, which is run down, but it's on 42nd Street in an area that is not desirable. But he has this big vision for reinvigorating the city. So he's trying to get people to invest, but at the same time, his father is being sued by like the Department of Housing and the NAACP for racist housing tactics, basically trying to prevent black people from renting their apartments. So most people think Donald Trump's idea of buying the Commodore is ridiculous. But for those who are somewhat interested, they're turned off because they say, we're not interested in doing business with you until you get this whole racism thing cleared up. And that's when Donald Trump meets Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn, for people who don't know, is this problematic-ass attorney.
That's one way to put it. I don't believe in terms like monsters or evil, but that man is as close.
Well, at the bare minimum, he's a hypocrite. But anyway, Roy Cohn takes a liking to Donald Trump, which is not really explained, and chooses to help him, which is not very well explained, because he ultimately gives up his fee.
I think that he finds him. Jeremy Strong plays Roy Cohn in this film, and he finds Trump appealing, I think, based on how he's kind of touching him and things he says.
But anyway, to wrap it up, Roy Cohn helps Donald Trump twice, basically. First, to get rid of the racism lawsuit, he basically threatens like a high member of the Department of Housing.
Department of Justice.
Or Department of Justice by exposing him as being a homosexual. So that's the one time. And the second time is when Trump is trying to get the New York City Council to vote to not charge property taxes so that Trump can get investors for the Commodore purchase. And Roy Cohn does that by threatening one of the city council members, because we find out that Roy Cohn has these parties where he gets all these VIPs to come and records them doing shady things, scandalous things, or admitting to illegal things.
Or they seek advice through him, much like Nixon was doing, who a clip of Nixon actually opens the film.
So those are the two ways Roy Cohn helps Donald Trump directly. For the rest of Roy Cohn's a big part of the film, but he's just kind of like this hanger-on. especially in the second half of the film.
He is, but he is the identity that Trump borrows.
But we'll explain that better. But the film ends with Roy Cohn dying.
Of AIDS.
Although he doesn't admit to it. He says that he had liver cancer.
Well, he was a person who vehemently did not identify as gay because he thought that gay people were weak.
But the final scene of the film is Donald Trump now is on top of the world because he has had Trump Tower built. He's buying up all of Atlantic City, and he's hired a writer to help him write a book, which was ultimately The Art of the Deal. And then we see Trump sort of at peak Trumpness. Like, if you compare him at the beginning of the film to the final scene, the person we see at the end, you can see how that person turned into who we know today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think the finale is meant to be the crystallization of the Trump that we all know.
But what didn't work for me is I don't fully understand, because Trump's dad, it's made to seem like Donald Trump's under his thumb. We get a scene at home with the family, and the father's, it's giving John Menendez to me.
Yes.
Because he's belittling one of the brothers, saying that you're a pilot, you're a glorified bus driver. Like, I'm so embarrassed of you. I don't even tell people I have a second son.
And that's Fred Jr., that's Freddie.
It's so over the top.
Played by Charlie Carrick, who was giving me kind of Jean-Paul Belmondo vibes with his look, But
so we get that sort of background, and we understand that Donald Trump earlier on, like in the story of this film, sort of feels like he can't do anything without his father's permission. And he does explain he works for his dad, but he does this whole Commodore deal kind of behind his dad's back. But the details of all of it are non-existent.
Well, he's able to do so because Roy Cohn quashes the lawsuit against his father, and Trump gives an interview where he announces his plans for his hotel.
Roy Cohn encourages Trump to basically let everyone know what he's doing and get everyone excited so that his dad can't say no.
He can't back out, yeah.
So that makes sense to me, except that, so then the Commodore happens, and now it's like the Grand Hyatt Hotel, because Trump gets the Hyatt Group to invest. But then he builds Trump Tower, like this high-rise from scratch, ultra luxury, during the same time he marries Ivana.
Played by Maria Bakalova. Poor thing. First, she's almost assaulted by Rudy Giuliani, and
now she has to play Donald Trump's wife. But it was very unclear to me within the movie of how he was able to do that. Does he still work for his father? Is this his own thing? Because then after that, when he's trying to get funds for Atlantic City and to build other projects, the banks won't give him any money because he's behind on other payments.
He's in debt, yeah.
So there's a scene where he tries to trick his father into signing over, like, the trust that the dad has for the children to give Donald Trump more assets to secure more loans. And then that just sort of goes nowhere. So I think at the end, I really didn't understand.
Well, same thing with where there is the falling out with Roy Cohn. Because after a moment, by the time we get to Atlantic City, Cohn is kind of on the back burner with Trump.
Right, and then it seems like Donald Trump wants to distance himself from Roy Cohn because he thinks he has AIDS. But then in the end, he throws a big birthday party for him and kind of thanks him.
I think there was, I think the film takes pains to humanize Trump a little bit, to show that he was this naive person. But that was one of the human elements, that I think that he has guilt for how he's treated this man.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so the other thing is, I'm very familiar with the subject, both Roy Cohn and Donald Trump, and I can't imagine anyone who would watch this movie doesn't know who Donald Trump is. But I wonder, like, in 50 years, you know, if some 25-year-old watched this and really didn't know much about Donald Trump at all, what would you get from this story? And I think you'd be pretty confused as to how this person got to the end of the movie. Like, why did people believe in him? How was he even in a position to have access to these people? Donald Trump first meets Roy Cohn at this very exclusive members-only club,
of which Trump is the youngest member.
And that's all we're told. We don't understand, like, is he supposed to be rich? I'm sure it costs money to be there. The other members have to vote to let them in. Why would they do that? Because Roy Cohn invites Donald Trump to his private dinner table at the club, and no one knows who he is. So it's like, well, who voted for his ass and why? And then he's driving around, Donald Trump's driving around in a Cadillac with custom plates. But then we see him living in kind of a shitty apartment, but then clearly his dad has money. I'm just all very confused with.
Well, which I think is okay because as a person, this narrative is telling us he's still very unformed.
Sure. So it doesn't not work.
No, but again, I do think that it's steering a course in the middle ground. It's playing it safe, I think.
Well, okay, so then that's where my biggest issue is. I think this movie would have been so much better if we focused more on Roy Cohn. Because the most exciting moments are with Roy Cohn and his nastiness and how he gets things done.
Well, he's a bitch.
And then watching Donald Trump sort of be so naive in the background. Mm-hmm. So I almost feel like the title of the film makes sense. I just wanted more of that dynamic. Like, I wish Roy Cohn were the lead. And then you just, like, his little apprentice is like someone you might have heard of, a Donald J. Trump. I think that would have been gaggy. Mm-hmm. But instead it's reversed. So it's like 70% Donald Trump.
We do in the script, which is written by Gabriel Sherman, by the way, in this, of the things he's written, including Independence Day Resurgence, the loudest voice is probably the closest that this resembles. But we get the greatest hits about Cohn, that he worked on McCarthy's team, and of course was responsible for the execution of the Rosenbergs, which comes up, I think that's the opening line of The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, about how it felt in New York the summer the Rosenbergs were murdered. But Jeremy Strong plays him like he's dead inside.
I thought he played him like a zombie chicken because he looks dead behind the eyes, and there's a lot of this, like a damn chicken. It was driving me crazy.
And I think it's meant to, and it's a lot different than I think before this, the most widespread portrayal of Cohn is Al Pacino in the Angels in America series. But.
Yeah, and that's a very different portrayal, which I preferred because Al Pacino plays him like a monster, but also he's more dynamic. Like, I can see why people sort of gravitated to him, not only because he gets things done, but he has this vibrant personality. And perhaps Jeremy Strong's portrayal is more true to the actual Roy Cohn. And I'm not saying that I didn't like it. He's not a likable figure, so it's fine that I didn't like him. In fact, I think the moments I enjoyed most were with Roy Cohn at the helm of the scene. So his parties, him trying to blackmail people. That being said, I think Sebastian Stan's performance is very strong.
Yeah.
I really saw Donald Trump in him. I'm surprised that he didn't get more attention for this instead of...
Well, at the Cannes Film Festival, Jesse Plemons was awarded the Best Actor prize for Kinds of Kindness, and I was shocked because I thought it would be Sebastian Stan, especially since he just won Best Actor in Berlin several months prior to that in A Different Man.
I think his performance in A Different Man is fine, but this one's better to me.
This one's better, and I feel like his mouth must have hurt.
Yeah, he has the facial expressions, the mannerisms down. It was fun to watch.
Kind of in a captivating way. But then I also understand why nobody probably wanted to touch this film, which also, the producers received a cease and desist letter at Cannes. Major distributors didn't want the film because I think they were all afraid of litigation. So that's why we have, Briarcliff Entertainment isn't one of the big dogs, but I think it's still going to get a lot of attention.
So when Roy Cohn first meets Donald Trump at the private club, he kind of just sizes him up and then gets a sense of who he is. And then the next time we see them meet, Donald Trump wants Roy Cohn's help to alleviate this NAACP lawsuit. And so then we get a scene where Roy Cohn and I think his main boy toy, Russell.
Mm-hmm.
They're there and they invite Donald Trump to sit with them, and Roy plies Donald with vodka. And I thought that was a pretty exciting scene because I was assuming that Roy was going to make a pass at Donald, which he kind of does. He keeps calling him handsome, and
everybody keeps telling him he looks like Robert Redford, which
Well, I will say, I'm not, I don't want to be shady just because it's Donald Trump. I will say a young Donald Trump, I think was more good or better. He was better looking than Sebastian Stan in this movie.
Oh yeah, Sebastian Stan is from Go is like a puffy mess.
Yeah.
But
So to be fair to Donald Trump, he did look better than that.
great work on the hair.
Yeah.
By the
And
way.
whomever did the makeup, because they have him looking so crazy. At one point, Ivana's yelling at him. We'll get to that scene. But she basically does a Coco Montrese, like, do you see how orange you look?
Yeah.
But Roy agrees to help Donald. He takes a fee of $10,000 and says, I'll help you get out of this lawsuit. And then they go to trial. And I think it's like, it's not for the first time we see them in court. It's Donald and Roy in the back of the limo. And Donald says, do you think we're going to win? And Roy says, hell no. Your damn leasing agents, on every application from a black person, they wrote C. And I'm sure that didn't stand for cashmere or whatever he says. Like, clearly it meant colored. So he's like, no, you're not going to win. And Donald Trump's like, what? And that's when we get Roy Cohn explaining
his three rules.
The three rules for winning, which are basically attack, admit nothing, deny everything. And number 3 is never admit defeat. But ultimately, he does help him win the case because they go through back channels and threaten that Department of Justice person, saying that, because at that time it was illegal. Like, if you were a homosexual working for the federal government, that could be grounds to be terminated.
Yes.
So that's what they used to threaten this man.
So it's because of closeted homosexuals that we have Donald Trump.
I thought a funny line. I did think that if it weren't for the finesse of Sebastian Stan's performance, this could have easily been a comedy.
I think that it maybe would have been a little better served if it had been more satirical.
I agree.
But then it would it'd be like Don't Look Up. I think it would be speaking to only a certain part of the population.
It would feel more pandering, yeah.
Yes, and this, I think that's taking pains in not doing that.
Yes, I agree. But we hear about Roy's parties that if you're indicted, you're invited. I thought that was
That got
funny.
a few chuckles, yes. I think Jeremy Strong is making deliberate choices, and it's a compelling performance as well, even though it's frustrating to watch. But I will say, as a gay man, I don't recall ever having seen a movie about AIDS or somebody dying from it that I was not moved by. Like, this is the first time, and I've seen this film twice now, I felt absolutely nothing for him, which is a really curious experience from my perspective.
Well, again, if you don't know anything about the subjects and you're just watching this story, it's like, yeah, 2 really unlikable people they only deserve the best of the worst. So then it's like, yeah, you don't feel anything for them.
The screaming match that occurs between them in the film.
Towards the end, yeah. I mean, even that didn't have any...
Well, it's just because at this point, the only favor we see Roy Cohn asking Trump of in this film is housing Russell, who has full-blown pneumonia and needs a place to stay. And Trump eventually kicks Russell out of the room. So Roy Cohn goes to confront him, and he's screaming at him. And then Trump yells back, like, "You're the devil."
Yeah.
like, who are you to yell at me for losing my humanity?
Yeah. Well, I probably should explain that at a point, Roy Cohn takes Donald Trump to get like nicer suits to go do a pitch for the Commodore project. And they go to this suit shop, like atelier place, and Roy chooses a suit that's like $1,200. And Donald's like, I can't afford that. And Roy says, don't worry about it. And he has Donald's check in his pocket for $10,000, the fee. And he says, I'm not going to charge you, you're going to owe me one. And I thought that aspect of their relationship to me, for a movie called The Apprentice and for us spending so much time with Roy Cohn, I feel like that was not well handled. Like, I don't understand what Roy got out of this.
Well, he says you're going to be my friend.
He says that being around a millionaire, a successful millionaire, will only do things for me, but we don't see what those things are. I think the point is, I really would have preferred more of Roy Cohn and less of Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump meeting Ivana and him courting her, that was not very interesting. The only interesting thing about Ivana was the scene where they're negotiating their marriage. Because the three of them meet, Ivana, Donald, and Roy. And because Roy's like, you have to have her sign a prenup. And of course, Donald's dumbass didn't read the prenup. But Ivana's smarter than Donald, so she's reading it. And she gets mad. Like, you're only going to give me $20,000 a year if we get divorced? And you want me to give back all the gifts you give me? Boy, bye. So she gets up and leaves. And then they have an exchange where she's like, they're negotiating.
She goes, put $100K in my account right now and we can still get married.
Yeah.
The women are consistently portrayed as more intelligent than Trump, because also his mother, we see her stopping Martin Donovan, her husband, signing over Trump's access to the trust.
Right. Like, she's smart enough to know that this is not what we should be doing.
I mean, granted, at that point, Fred apparently is suffering from dementia, so doesn't really know what's going on. But it's like, yeah, it's the women that are reading the fine print.
We do get some celebrity appearances. We see Donald doing an interview with Barbara Walters.
And they had to include that, I feel, because that's the interview where he infamously talked about if he lost all his money, he would run for president.
Yeah. And then we see Donald meeting Andy Warhol at a party, at one of Roy's parties.
And being oblivious to who Warhol was. Mm-hmm.
And then we see at the opening of Trump Tower, I believe, a Liberace is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all these, it's very interesting now that we're not erasing homosexuality. Like, all of the gay stuff that was really going on in the background in 1980s New York.
But I do think that, again, if a person, like, I remember this era of Trump, so I remember how, like, all the celebrity that surrounded just even the name of Trump. I don't think, if a person doesn't know anything about Donald Trump and you watch this, I don't think you would understand his celebrity at that time.
The magnitude, yeah.
He just seems like a guy who wants to build a hotel, and he has this nasty lawyer helping him cut a couple slick deals to do it. And then all of a sudden now he's like a tycoon. Like, he has Trump Tower and he's buying all of Atlantic City. Like, how did that happen?
Like the shadow version of Fountainhead, kind of.
Okay, we also see that Donald Trump's very concerned about his hair because all he's doing is playing with it. And there's a moment, because now he's decided that he doesn't love Ivana. And they have a moment where they live in this grand castle overlooking, I don't even know, Central Park, like this beautiful home. And he's sitting in like the drawing room reading a GQ magazine with him on the cover. Mm-hmm. And Ivana walks in trying to be sexy and cute, and she brings him a gift in a pink box. And he opens it, and it's the book, The G-Spot. So clearly, like, he doesn't know how to lay it down. And she's trying to help his ass. And then she's trying to encourage him, well, let's go to the bedroom and try some of this out. And he tells her, I'm not attracted to you. Like, when I kiss you, when I touch you, it feels like work. And she gets mad and she's like, you're so ugly and fat. Look at your makeup. Look how orange you look. And he's just looking at her. And then she goes, and you're going bald. And the bald sent him.
Oh, loses it.
He hits her, knocks her down on the ground, and then, like, sexually assaults her. It's kind of wild.
Yes, and I think that that's probably the scene that most people will have a problem with at the liberties being taken.
I had a problem with it as it was happening, and then I thought about it, and I think, well, he has been accused of sexual improprieties and being sexually aggressive, and
we have him on saying how he likes to grab women's genitalia, doesn't he?
So I mean, I guess it would make sense to show something to that effect. He's also concerned about his weight, and he goes to a doctor, and this man. The doctor goes, well, maybe you should start exercising.
He goes, no, absolutely not.
He's, I don't believe in that. He says that the body has a finite amount of energy and I don't want to waste it all. And the doctor goes, that is absolutely not how the body works. But we find out that Donald Trump's been taking diet pills, which were basically amphetamines. Like, he's taking speed, which I thought was funny because he takes it a lot. We see him taking it a lot. But he's still big. I don't understand.
He still thickums, yeah. I don't
What's
know.
the point of being high all the time?
Well, he doesn't do anything
On
else.
speed.
Like, he has no other vices, really, except for food.
Yeah, but we don't really see him think about food except for one scene in Atlantic City where he's trying to convince, I think it's Roy Cohn, that he wants to buy this casino, like the first one. And then they walk past the buffet line.
Is this free?
He's like, is this free? Oh, I got to get in on this. And he cuts the line to get some cheese balls and some meat sticks.
Roy Cohn's attitude in Atlantic City is like, this is just trash.
Well, because at that point, Roy is also sick.
Yes.
So he's extra funky. But yeah, I was expecting a little bit more about Trump's proclivities, like how he is sedentary, how he does overeat, how he is vain. If you really wouldn't know it until the one scene when he goes to the doctor and asks for a solution. And so the doctor says, well, since your fat ass doesn't want to work out, we're going to do liposuction and we're going to do scalp reduction. And then we see Donald Trump getting liposuction, and then he gets like his bald spot cut out. But then we immediately cut to the next scene, which is the last scene where he meets the ghostwriter of his book. And he looks the exact same. I thought that was funny.
The scene with the doctor also proves how he chooses, what he chooses to listen to. Not going to listen to exercise or anything, but then pulls the doctor aside to say, like, how do you feel about AIDS?
Yeah, what do you think about this AIDS thing? Can I get it if people touch me or cough on me? Yeah, it is curious. Like, so you don't want to listen to the experts, but you're picking and choosing what works for you.
Right.
And then he still doesn't really listen to the doctor, because then we see that Trump has bought what is now Mar-a-Lago, and he invites Roy. After they've had a major falling out, after the big fight where they're screaming at each other on the street, Roy Cohn slaps Trump. Now Trump feels bad after seeing Roy Cohn do an interview saying that he's not gay because he's too aggressive and butch to be gay.
He doesn't have any of the stereotypical behavior, the mannerisms of a gay.
And then that he doesn't have AIDS, he has liver cancer.
Okay.
And so then Trump decides to call him and tell him he misses him. I was confused by that. It's almost like maybe the script was afraid to speculate more on their relationship. Like maybe that was going to be the part that would get them in trouble.
Yeah.
That's what I suspect, that maybe they were going to go in more and get a little juicier and make shit up, but then they got scared. And so what we got feels a little half-baked to me.
I mean, hey, we had that television series called That's My Bush during Bush's first presidency. I mean, why not go in? I don't know.
And then my pull quote comes from the end where the writer Trump hired to write The Art of the Deal, he's trying to get stuff from Trump, and Trump is refusing to give him anything other than like quotes. He's like, I know you want to get deep into my like what makes me tick, but people don't care about that. This is what it is. And the writer says, well, you just sound like all you care about is making a deal. And Trump goes, yeah, that's what I care about. And that's when the writer says to Trump, I'm finding it hard to settle on a grand narrative. Like people don't want to read about your 3 steps to being a winner. And that's when when the writer says, where did you get these 3 steps from? And as we would expect, he's not going to be honest about where he got his ethos from.
I have a killer instinct. Okay.
And then the final shot is like the camera closes in on Donald Trump's face and we see the reflection of New York City in his eyeball. But the makeup is deliberately so bad and cakey. I thought that was the best way to end the movie.
Yeah, there's some shade going on in this film, but I think the first time I saw it, I was expecting much more.
Much more
Shadiness.
Well, I was expecting a lot more of anything, really, because even I like how the film looks. It has that late 70s, early 80s vibe.
Shot by Casper Tuxen, who also did The Worst Person in the World and Riders of Justice.
And there are a lot of different textures to the cinematography that I really liked.
There is one moment that the laugh out loud moment, there's one, is when Trump is pushing Jeremy Strong
through Mar-a-Lago, and he's in a wheelchair.
Because it's not wheelchair accessible, and he just pushes him down.
Well, he pushed him down the steps, but he's like bouncing. Like this man is dying of AIDS, fragile as hell, and all you care about is telling him about your new property.
But also speaks to the period where we didn't make things accessible to people either.
Sure.
But yeah, I kind of wanted a little more of things like that.
What would you give The Apprentice.
I still think it's worth a watch. I'm curious to see how history will treat this film. And as you know, the distributor has opened it at a very specific time. But I recommend it, and I would give it 3.5.
I would also recommend it. I did enjoy watching it. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.